On the surface, governments talk about defense, deterrence, and threats to national security. But behind the carefully crafted statements is a complex web of fear, power, history, and control. Israel's strike on Iran was not simply about stopping nuclear development or responding to a direct threat. It was about reasserting dominance in a region that is shifting faster than many expected. Iran has been growing in influence for years, not just militarily, but politically and ideologically. For Israel, this is a nightmare scenario. The balance of power in the Middle East is incredibly delicate. If Iran is allowed to gain the upper hand, not just with nuclear technology, but also through its alliances and proxies like Hezbollah, the entire structure Israel has worked to build and maintain could collapse. Israel sees itself as a military and strategic leader in the region. Its survival has always depended on staying one step ahead of its neighbors. Any rise in Iranian power is seen as a direct threat, not just in terms of weapons, but in terms of ideology. Iran supports resistance movements across the Arab world, and its anti-Israel stance is central to its foreign policy. For Tel Aviv, it isn't just posturing. It's a serious long-term threat to its national identity and geopolitical influence. So when Iran makes strides in nuclear technology or deepens its relationships with countries like Russia, China, or even some of its Arab neighbors, Israel sees that as a red line. Even if those developments don't directly translate into missiles tomorrow, they set the stage for a stronger Iran tomorrow, and that's something Israel is not willing to tolerate. There's also the factor of internal politics. Israeli leaders are often under intense pressure, both from political opponents and the public. By striking Iran, a government under scrutiny can redirect attention and show strength. It sends a message not just to Tehran, but also to voters back home. We are in control, we are proactive. It becomes a demonstration of strength that can unite citizens, even if only temporarily. And when the region reacts, when Iran responds or threatens retaliation, it often plays into the same cycle of justification. See, they are dangerous. We were right to act first. This kind of narrative helps reinforce public support for more aggressive policies. Another layer is the global geopolitical theater. The US, Israel's closest ally, has been hesitant in recent years to take bold military actions in the region. With Washington facing its own internal divisions and foreign policy fatigue, Israel may feel increasingly alone and responsible for its own security. That pushes its military strategy toward more preemptive action. At the same time, growing cooperation between Iran and Russia in Syria, and even with China economically, creates a new axis of influence that threatens the Western-aligned balance of power. Israel knows that once Iran is fully integrated into a new global order, acting against it would be much harder, if not impossible. This is the logic of now or never. Delay is defeat. Finally, the attack could be part of a larger plan to provoke Iran into a response that justifies even more aggressive military and diplomatic measures. It's a dangerous game of chess where Israel moves a piece hoping Iran will take the bait and give Israel the moral upper hand in front of the international community. But the cost of this strategy is high, potentially spiraling into a regional or even global conflict. Still, for Israel's leadership, it may seem like the only option left. Waiting for peace while your enemies grow stronger is a gamble Israel doesn't believe it can afford. So it acts first, fast and without apology, because in their view, survival is never about waiting. It's about striking before you're struck. So it chooses to strike, to control the battlefield before it becomes too crowded, and to remind the world that it still plays by its own rules. Israel's strategic dominance in the Middle East has always been central to its national policy. Since its establishment, Israel has operated with the belief that its survival depends on military superiority and rapid response to any threat. This belief is rooted in its geographical vulnerability and the historical hostility of neighboring countries. The attack on Iran must be seen within this context. It wasn't just about targeting nuclear facilities, it was about asserting and preserving dominance in a region where rival powers, especially Iran, are gaining ground. Iran's growing influence across Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, and Yemen through its network of proxy forces poses a challenge to Israel's freedom of movement and regional control. Tehran has positioned itself as the leader of what it calls the axis of resistance against Israel and Western presence in the Middle East. As Iran's role expands, Israel sees its own influence slowly diminishing, which it considers a strategic threat. This pressure to maintain dominance drives Israel to act before situations spiral out of its control. The concern isn't limited to military developments. It extends to ideological and political influence. Iran's opposition to Israel is not only military but deeply ideological, framing itself as a defender of oppressed Muslims and a counterweight to Western-backed regimes in the region. This narrative resonates in many parts of the Arab and Islamic world and undermines the quiet normalization efforts Israel has made with countries like the UAE, Bahrain, and Saudi Arabia. A more powerful and influential Iran could sabotage those diplomatic gains, pushing other nations away from aligning with Israel. In such a scenario, Israel fears being surrounded not just physically but politically, losing leverage in peace negotiations, security alliances, and economic cooperation. To prevent this kind of regional shift, Israel believes it must act aggressively and decisively. The timing of the strike on Iran is also crucial. Israeli officials likely felt that regional and global conditions offered a rare window to act with minimal consequences. With the world distracted by other geopolitical crises, such as the war in Ukraine or tensions in the South China Sea, a strike on Iran could occur without the kind of unified international backlash that might have come in calmer times. Additionally, Israel understands that future regional dynamics may not favor it. If Iran continues to strengthen ties with powerful allies like Russia and China, those relationships could eventually shield Iran from future attacks through political or even military support. Acting now, before those alliances solidify, allows Israel to maintain the upper hand. It's a preemptive move to stop the strategic shift before it fully takes shape. Israel also relies heavily on deterrence to prevent conflicts. By demonstrating its willingness to strike Iran, one of the most fortified and dangerous countries in the region, it reinforces a message to other adversaries. Hezbollah, Hamas, and other militias watching closely understand that Israel is not hesitant to act. This projection of power is a form of psychological warfare. It tells Israel's enemies that their buildup of strength will not be tolerated and that Israel will always act before the threat becomes real. It also reassures Israeli citizens, showing them that their government is proactive in defending the nation, which builds internal confidence and unity. Ultimately, the strike on Iran is about control. Israel wants to shape the regional landscape, not simply react to it. It believes that waiting for Iran to become stronger is too dangerous. Instead of being forced into a reactive war years down the line, Israel chooses a targeted strike now to tilt the balance in its favor. This mindset of strategic domination through preemptive action is deeply ingrained in Israel's defense philosophy. In a region full of uncertainty, Israel believes it cannot afford to be passive. To maintain its position, it must lead with action, not wait for threats to fully emerge. This principle guided its decision to confront Iran directly, regardless of the risks or international fallout. Israel's fear of Iran's nuclear capability is one of the most critical drivers behind its military actions. The idea of a nuclear-armed Iran is viewed not only as a strategic threat but as an existential one. From Israel's perspective, even the slightest possibility that Iran could develop a nuclear bomb is unacceptable. This fear is based on both history and logic. Iran has openly called for the end of the Israeli state on numerous occasions, and while some statements may be political rhetoric, Israel cannot afford to take them lightly. The memory of the Holocaust and decades of regional hostility have shaped a mindset that demands absolute caution. For Israel, survival means eliminating threats before they grow into dangers too large to control. The nuclear question is not just about physical destruction. It's about deterrence, regional influence, and Israel's ability to maintain its own sovereignty without living under the constant threat of annihilation. Iran insists its nuclear program is peaceful, focused on energy and medical research. But Israel and its allies believe otherwise, citing evidence of hidden enrichment sites, missile developments, and the secrecy surrounding Iran's nuclear facilities. The fear is that once Iran crosses the threshold, meaning it has all the components and knowledge necessary to build a bomb, it would be nearly impossible to stop them without full-scale war. By then, the cost of action would be unimaginably high, both in human lives and in political consequences. That's why Israel prefers to act early, even when it means defying international pressure or risking a wider conflict. The recent attack is part of that strategy, to delay or destroy Iran's progress before it reaches a point of no return. There's also a deeper strategic calculation behind Israel's resistance to a nuclear Iran. If Iran were to succeed in developing nuclear weapons, it would fundamentally change the balance of power in the region. Israel, which is widely believed to possess nuclear weapons itself, would no longer be the only nuclear power in the Middle East. That would break the unspoken strategic advantage Israel has enjoyed for decades. Other countries in the region, such as Saudi Arabia or Egypt, might feel pressured to pursue their own nuclear programs in response, leading to a dangerous arms race across the Middle East. Israel sees this scenario as a pathway to greater instability, increased tensions, and the potential for catastrophic miscalculation. The nuclear issue, therefore, is not just about Israel and Iran. It's about the future of an entire region that has already suffered from years of war, extremism, and instability. Additionally, a nuclear Iran could embolden its allies and proxies to act more aggressively. Hezbollah in Lebanon, for example, could feel protected under an Iranian nuclear umbrella, launching more frequent or more intense attacks on Israel. The same goes for armed groups in Gaza or even militias in Syria and Iraq. If these groups believe that Israel would be hesitant to respond harshly out of fear of triggering a larger war with a nuclear-armed Iran, it would shift the tactical advantage away from Israel. That's why Israel sees neutralizing Iran's nuclear capabilities as a matter of national defense and regional security. It's not just about Iran having a bomb, it's about the chain reaction that bomb would cause in military behavior, alliances, and psychological warfare. In the end, Israel's decision to strike is driven by the belief that it is dealing with a limited window of time. Every day that Iran continues to enrich uranium, improve missile delivery systems, and strengthen its defenses, the more difficult it becomes to stop them. The recent military action is not just a strike. It's a message that Israel will not wait for a diplomatic solution that might fail. A message that it will act alone if necessary to protect its people, its sovereignty, and its future. When Israel launched its attack on Iran, it was not only trying to prevent the development of nuclear weapons or reduce Iran's military capabilities. It was also sending a deliberate and powerful message to the entire region. Israel's strategy has long relied on deterrence, the idea that showing strength discourages enemies from taking aggressive action. In the Middle East, where tensions are always high and rivalries run deep, perception is everything. If Israel appears weak, indecisive, or passive, its enemies become bolder. If it shows strength and the willingness to act without hesitation, those same enemies are more likely to think twice before making a move. That's why the strike on Iran was not just a military action. It was a warning, a signal sent to Hezbollah, Hamas, Syria, and every other group or state that might consider challenging Israel's power. Deterrence is about more than weapons. It's about reputation. Israel wants its enemies to believe that any threat against it will be met with swift and overwhelming force. This mindset is deeply rooted in Israel's history. From the early days of its existence, surrounded by hostile neighbors, Israel had to fight multiple wars just to survive. Those experiences taught Israeli leaders that the best way to avoid war is to prepare for it and show a clear willingness to fight if necessary. The idea is not to encourage war, but to prevent it by making the cost of attacking Israel seem too high. The strike on Iran serves as a reinforcement of that philosophy. It tells the world that Israel will not wait to be attacked. It will act first if it feels its security is at risk. This approach also helps Israel maintain psychological dominance. In conflicts, morale plays a huge role. If your enemies believe you are stronger, more capable, and more determined, they often hesitate or fail to act altogether. Israel wants groups like Hezbollah and Hamas to live under the fear that any hostile move could result in devastating retaliation. And by striking Iran, a much larger and more powerful country, it magnifies that fear. If Israel is willing to confront Iran, then no one else in the region is safe from its reach. This perception helps Israel contain threats before they become larger conflicts. Another part of this strategy is regional messaging. Countries like Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Jordan, and Egypt are watching closely. Some of them quietly cooperate with Israel on security matters because they share the same fear of Iran's influence. By taking bold action, Israel reinforces the idea that it is a reliable and strong partner in the region, capable of doing what others might not dare to do. This can improve diplomatic ties, strengthen alliances, and create more behind-the-scenes cooperation. At the same time, it reminds countries that may be on the fence about Iran that siding with Tehran could be risky. The message is clear. Israel is not going to sit back and let Iran take over the region politically or militarily. Even to the international community, this strike acts as a form of communication. It tells the world that Israel will not rely solely on diplomatic negotiations that it sees as weak or ineffective. While global powers argue, delay and compromise, Israel chooses action. This may bring criticism, but it also garners respect from some quarters. Nations know that Israel is serious about its red lines. In a world where many governments hesitate or retreat, Israel stands out as a country willing to make bold decisions to protect its future. The result is a strong deterrent signal that goes far beyond the battlefield. It enters the minds of enemies, allies, and observers alike, shaping how they view and engage with Israel moving forward. Internal political pressure plays a significant role in the timing and motivation behind Israel's attack on Iran. In any democratic country, political leaders are constantly under scrutiny from the public, opposition parties, and the media. In Israel, this pressure is often magnified due to the constant threat of war, economic challenges, and deep social divisions. At times of political instability or declining public confidence, military action can serve as a way to restore authority and rally national unity. For the Israeli leadership, showing strength through decisive action can shift the public's attention away from internal problems and toward a common external threat. This tactic has been used in many countries throughout history, and Israel is no exception. By attacking Iran, Israeli leaders can position themselves as protectors of national security, standing up to a major threat and defending the people. The political landscape in Israel is often fractured, with coalition governments made up of diverse parties that frequently disagree on key issues. Leaders sometimes struggle to maintain stability and pass important legislation. When the public perceives the government as weak or divided, political opponents gain momentum. In such an environment, a bold military move can change the political narrative. It sends a message that the leadership is strong, capable, and willing to act in the national interest. It also forces political rivals to either support the action and appear united, or risk looking disloyal during a time of national crisis. This creates a temporary sense of unity that benefits the government in power, helping to delay or deflect political challenges. Military action can also serve as a distraction from domestic issues. If the economy is struggling, protests are rising, or corruption scandals are emerging, a strike against an external enemy can change the national conversation. People become focused on security, fear of retaliation, and the need to defend the country. Emotions run high, and political divisions are often set aside, at least for a while. This gives the government breathing space and a stronger platform from which to operate. It also increases approval ratings as citizens tend to rally behind their leaders during times of conflict or military action. The perception of taking bold action helps leaders regain trust and credibility, especially if they were previously seen as passive or ineffective. Furthermore, Israeli society places a high value on strength and security. The threat from neighboring countries and groups has been part of the national experience for decades. Politicians know that appearing soft on security can damage their image and reduce their chances of re-election. On the other hand, taking a hard stance against enemies, particularly one as widely viewed as dangerous as Iran, can boost popularity. It plays into the national mindset that Israel must always be ready to defend itself, and that waiting for international help is too risky. Therefore, leaders may feel pressured to act not just for military reasons, but to meet public expectations and avoid appearing weak. In this context, the attack on Iran becomes more than just a strategic decision. It becomes a political tool. The military objectives may be real and important, but they are also intertwined with the political realities of leading a divided, high-pressure nation. Leaders must balance the demands of their party, their coalition partners, their voters, and taking bold action, especially against a known threat, can help unify those forces, even if only temporarily. The decision to attack Iran then is influenced not only by external threats, but by the need to strengthen internal political standing, restore authority, and reshape the national conversation at a critical moment in Israel's political life. Israel's sense of urgency in attacking Iran is also shaped by the rapidly shifting global landscape.